Joining me now is Basil Smikle, director of the public policy program at the Roosevelt House Institute of Hunter College, Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. And also with me is Noah Rothman, senior writer for National Review. Thank you both so much for joining me. Noah, let's start with this DeSantis descent. And if you look at the numbers between his campaign, his leadership PAC, his fundraising, they brought in $15 million in the third quarter. When you see these numbers, what does it tell you about the state of DeSantis' campaign?
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's catastrophic, but it's not great. And it's particularly not great given where they started. This was a money-making machine, the DeSantis campaign and the PAC together. And they were presenting a very formidable force against Donald Trump's candidacy on paper, almost entirely as a result of their capacity to fundraise. They've had a spectacular burn rate, and apparently now we're beginning the faucet is beginning to close. You got the sense in the last debate that between the questions from the moderators and between the engagements between the candidates, the audience for that wasn't voters, it wasn't you and me, it was the donor class. There's very little appetite for a big sprawling field among the donor class, and apparently at this upcoming meeting on the 13th, a lot of high dollar donors from the GOP side are going to get together and say, listen, you guys got to winnow and you got to winnow tomorrow, or we're going to do it for you.
Basil, to that point, I mean, Noah gets it, I think, what we all started reporting on after that second GOP primary debate, which is that you had a lot of donors starting to panic and to say, who are we going to back if they didn't want to back former President Trump? I mean, how significant is this moment for DeSantis, who was the guy to beat Trump? And is Iowa really his last stand, or can he go to New Hampshire, where, frankly, Nikki Haley has a lead right now?
Well, let me pick up on something that Noah said. That donor class becomes really important because they ask very specific questions. What do the polls say? What's your path forward? What's your burn rate? Because they look at all of those things. They want to know how you manage the money. They want to know if your message is getting through. And what I find to be really interesting, because he did start off really strong, and he wanted to prove to voters that he could take what he was doing in Florida through that bureaucracy, through all of that anti-woke legislation, and make it national. But the reality is that his message has been hard to sort of capture the hearts and minds of Republican voters nationally, because Donald Trump is the elephant in the room. So should he make an Iowa sort of last stand? I don't think so. If I were him, I would sort of chalk that up to Donald Trump and then try New Hampshire. And I think that's what Chris Christie's doing, by the way. So I think you rewrite the narrative if he actually does have a good showing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, Chris Christie is all in New Hampshire. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Let me put some of Nikki Haley's numbers up just to underscore this point and the fact that she has really been gaining so much ground, particularly in a state like New Hampshire, obviously her home state. Look at her there, Noah, in second place, double digits. I mean, you know, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about candidates not reaching double digits. There she is.
And Nikki Haley was not in that position in New Hampshire 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. She was down at the bottom of the pack. She's had a surge since the first primary debate, and it has not dissipated. She's beginning to vote a little bit more attention to Iowa now. She hasn't previously. But she's got a significant operation in New Hampshire, where she's been on the ground for a very long time. She's got a lot of name recognition in South Carolina and a built-in base there. And the pressure will be on Tim Scott to get, show some life in these polls, or get out sooner rather than later, in order to facilitate this kind of winnowing. And more to her advantage is her message. She is appealing to a very conventional Reaganite wing of the party. Tax cuts, fiscal prudence, extroverted foreign policy, America on the world stage. It is not the message Ron DeSantis is retailing. And frankly, it's not the message that Donald Trump is retailing. Those two candidates have locked in this lane, which is more of a populist, sort of self-conscious about American power on the world stage, and definitely profligate when it comes to spending policy.
Basil, this is what's so fascinating about the strategies of these different campaigns, because you have Nikki Haley running as a Reagan Republican and basically running for those moderate voters, whereas DeSantis is trying to run to the right of former President Trump, and clearly he's hitting roadblocks. What about a Tim Scott? I mean, do you think he has enough time to come back? We obviously saw him with that robust performance in the second GOP primary debate. Is he gaining enough ground, though?
I think it was a good performance, but you know, when I think about a voter making a choice in that instance, they would rather go with the executive. They would rather go with a Nikki Haley who, going to the point of the sort of Reagan-esque candidacy, I just remember the fact that that after the shooting in Charlotte at the church, she presided over the taking down of the Confederate flag from the Capitol. We can have a larger conversation about the significant symbolism of the flag in South Carolina, but that is a moment where she could say, you know what, I'm not the sort of ultra-conservative that people might make me out to be. I am a bit more moderate. And that kind of appeal, I think, has been working. So I don't know that Tim Scott is in a position to kind of elevate to that space where she has been able to do as an executive.
Let's talk about what's happening on the Democratic side. Of course, when you look at the polling, you see President Biden, GOP frontrunner, former President Trump in a dead heat. That has a lot of Democrats worried. Senator Manchin, who's, of course, getting some buzz as a potential third-party candidate, weighed in on President Biden today. Let's take a look at that.
Do you think Joe Biden is the best candidate on the Democratic side to beat Donald Trump?
You know, I think what you have is proven with Joe. Joe was able to beat Donald Trump. Is he going to be portrayed as the same as he was when he ran the first time? Okay, I don't know. That's to be seen yet.
So, Senator, was that a yes? You do think Joe Biden is the best candidate to beat Donald Trump?
If you're heads up right now, I'm looking at some polls the same as you're looking at them right now, and they're flipping back and forth all the time. So but right now, he is going to be the choice of the Democratic Party, and I believe that's what they're rallying behind.
Do you think he's the best choice?
I don't know who else is out there who's willing to get into the race until you have an open primary type thing or you have challenges. You really don't know.
Oh, Basil, that's not what the White House wants to hear.
Not at all. But you know what? In 2020, Joe Biden ran on bringing the country back to normalcy, ending the chaos. Guess what? 2024, especially today, that's actually still quite relevant. And he's the guy, and I think he's the one to marshal that.
No, it's a sign it's going to be a close race no matter what.
It's going to be a very close race, and Democrats are desperately hoping that Donald Trump becomes the nominee. One poll we hadn't talked about, Mark Keith, Joe Biden favorability rating on the economy, inflation, the border in the 20s. Still beats Donald Trump by 2 points among likely voters. That is not the case with Ron DeSantis. If it's anybody else, Joe Biden is in deep trouble.
All right. Well, a lot to watch as the primary unfolds. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.